on a quiet, rainy afternoon in Portland. Madison Carter was closing up her art studio when she saw a familiar face outside the window. It was Lena Morgan, the wife of Ethan Morgan, Madison's old college friend. They hadn't seen each other for years. But something in Lena's hesitant step and nervous eyes told Madison this visit was important. Lena walked inside holding a folded photo of one of Madison's paintings, a woman standing alone in fading light, her face full of longing. Lena admitted she hadn't felt real emotion in a long time and hoped Madison could help her find that feeling again through art. Madison agreed, not fully understanding how much this would change her life. Lena began coming to the studio regularly. Each session, she spoke more about her life with Ethan. They had grown apart, not in fights but in silence. Dinners were quiet and she felt invisible even when Ethan was nearby. She confessed she didn't even know how to connect with herself anymore, let alone with her husband. Madison listened and painted beside her, offering gentle encouragement. Lena's vulnerability struck a chord with Madison, reminding her of her own struggles with feeling unseen. One day, Lena surprised Madison by asking her to help reconnect with Ethan. She wanted to learn how to speak his language again, the language of emotions and understanding they had lost over the years. Lena believed Madison, who had known Ethan before marriage, could show her how to reach him. Madison hesitated but agreed, not knowing where this path would lead. That night she called Ethan. They met at a quiet cafe near Ethan's university. Ethan looked tired but still held his old charm. Their conversation flowed easily, as if no time had passed. Madison told him about Lena's desire to rebuild their connection. Ethan sighed, admitting he had been distant and distracted lately, caught between too many responsibilities. They talked about loneliness and lost dreams, and Madison saw that Ethan wasn't cold, just worn down by life's demands. After their meeting, Madison wrote a letter to Lena. She wanted to reassure her that Ethan still loved her deep down, even if he didn't always show it. But Madison also confessed something unexpected. Talking to Ethan had stirred feelings inside her she thought were long gone. She folded the letter and kept it private, afraid of the complicated emotions it revealed. Lena continued coming to the studio, learning not just how to paint, but how to feel again. Madison showed her how to notice small details and embrace vulnerability. Meanwhile, Madison found herself drawn closer to Ethan through their growing conversations. They exchanged texts filled with book quotes and shared memories. Each message made Madison's heart race, even though she tried to keep her distance. One evening after a gallery opening, Madison and Ethan found themselves alone under the city lights. Ethan asked if she ever thought they had chosen the wrong lives. Madison replied that maybe what felt right before didn't feel right anymore. Ethan then confessed he had never stopped thinking about her. Madison was shocked and tried to push the feelings away, reminding him they couldn't cross that line. Ethan understood, but needed to say it. Madison left without saying goodbye. The next day, Madison avoided the studio, and Lena noticed her silence. She reached out, concerned. Madison stared at the message, her heart heavy with confusion. She had promised to help Lena heal her marriage, but her own feelings were pulling her in a different direction. The boundaries between friendship, love, and longing were starting to blur, and Madison wasn't sure where this journey would end. After the heavy night when Ethan confessed his feelings, Madison felt her world tilt in ways she never expected. The walls she had carefully built around her heart began to crack, and every message from Ethan felt like a spark in dry wood, dangerous yet impossible to ignore. But she also knew she owed Lena honesty and respect, especially since Lena had come to her in such vulnerability, asking for help to save her marriage. Days passed with Madison avoiding the studio, unsure how to face Lena. Yet Lena's messages kept coming, simple, caring, full of hope. Madison felt guilty, torn between her promise to help and the growing tension in her chest. She wanted to tell Lena the truth, but feared shattering the fragile trust they were building. Madison finally decided to meet Lena for coffee, hoping that talking face to face would help her find clarity at the small cafe where they met. Lena looked tired but hopeful. Madison could see the weight of uncertainty in Lena's eyes. Without hesitation, Lena asked, "Is there something you're not telling me?" Madison swallowed hard. She knew this was the moment she had been avoiding. "There is," Madison admitted softly. "When I talked to Ethan, something unexpected happened. He told me things, and I felt things I didn't expect." Lena's face paled, but she nodded, bracing herself. "What kind of things?" Madison chose her words carefully. "He said he still thinks about me. And I feel something too. But I don't want to hurt you." Silence fell between them, thick and heavy. Lena looked down at her cup, then back up with steady eyes. "Madison, I asked for help because I was lost. If this is happening between you and Ethan, I want to know. It's painful, but I'd rather face the truth." Madison was relieved by Lena's honesty, but also terrified of the road ahead. They agreed to keep talking openly, even if the truth was complicated. That evening, Madison texted Ethan, trying to set boundaries. She told him they needed to slow down and think about what was happening. Ethan replied with understanding. But Madison sensed his own confusion mirrored hers. Meanwhile, Lena's efforts to reconnect with Ethan didn't go unnoticed. Ethan began showing small signs of change. He called her during the day, left thoughtful notes, and attended art sessions with Madison to support Lena. Madison watched them together, feeling like an outsider in a story she was both part of and powerless over. One afternoon, Lena invited Madison to join them at a park picnic. It was a chance for all three to spend time together, and Madison agreed despite her inner turmoil. The day was sunny, the kind that lifts spirits and softens hearts. They talked, laughed, and shared memories. For a moment, it seemed like the broken pieces might fit together again. But under the surface, the tension remained. Madison caught Ethan's lingering looks, moments when his smile faltered and his eyes searched hers. She reminded herself to stay distant, but every glance made her heart ache. Later that night, Madison lay awake, replaying every word and glance, wondering how much longer she could keep her feelings hidden then. An unexpected call changed everything. Ethan called Madison late one evening. His voice was low, weary. "I don't know what to do, Madison. Lena and we're trying, but I keep thinking about you. It's tearing me apart." Madison's breath caught. She wanted to tell him to stop, to focus on his marriage. But the raw honesty in his voice made her hesitate. "I don't want to hurt anyone," Madison said quietly. "But we can't pretend this isn't happening." They talked long into the night, sharing fears and regrets, knowing the road ahead was uncertain and painful. Days later, Madison found herself alone in the studio, staring at the half-finished painting Lena had been working on. It was a portrait of a woman looking toward a fading horizon full of hope and sorrow. Madison felt the weight of their story in that image, the longing to heal and the risk of breaking apart. Lena came in unexpectedly, her eyes red from crying. "I know about you and Ethan," she said softly. Madison didn't deny it. They sat together in silence, the distance between them filled with complicated emotions: betrayal, sadness, but also understanding. Lena took a deep breath. "I asked for help because I was scared to lose him. But maybe what I need is to find myself first. I don't want to lose either of you, but I can't keep living in fear." Madison nodded, tears welling up. "I want to help you, Lena, not just with art, but with healing. For you to find strength no matter what happens." They agreed to take a step back from Ethan, giving space to figure things out honestly. Madison knew this was just the beginning of a long journey for all three of them. In the weeks that followed, Madison focused on teaching Lena to see the world through new eyes, finding beauty in small moments. Courage in vulnerability. Lena blossomed, rediscovering parts of herself she had forgotten. Ethan, meanwhile, struggled with his own feelings, torn between old love and new possibilities. Madison realized that sometimes love isn't about possession or perfect endings. Sometimes it's about honesty, pain, and growth even when the path isn't clear. One afternoon, as the sun set over the city, Madison received a message from Ethan. "Thank you for being honest. Whatever happens, I'm grateful you're in my life." Madison smiled, knowing that whatever came next, she had chosen truth. And sometimes that was the most beautiful lesson of all. After the quiet, honest talk with David, Emily felt a strange calm settle over her. It wasn't relief or joy. It was something more complicated. The kind of calm that comes from knowing the truth, even if it's hard. David left for a few days on another business trip. This time, Emily didn't feel lonely. She felt free. Free to think, to breathe, to figure out who she really was without the weight of pretending. She and Ryan kept meeting, but it wasn't rushed or forced. There was no need. They shared their days, their hopes, and their fears in easy conversations over coffee. Long walks and quiet dinners. Ryan was patient with her. He didn't push for more than she was ready to give. And Emily liked that. She liked feeling seen, but on her own terms. One afternoon, Ryan invited her to a photography exhibit he was helping organize. It was small but beautiful portraits of real people caught in moments of truth. As they walked through the gallery, Emily stopped in front of a photograph of a woman standing alone on a cliff, looking out over the ocean. The wind pulled at her hair and dress. "She looks strong," Emily said. Ryan nodded. "And a little scared." Emily smiled softly. "That's how I feel sometimes." Ryan looked at her with understanding. "It's okay to be scared. It means you're alive." That night, Emily went home and sat at her painting desk. She opened her brushes and started to work. This time, the colors were bright and bold. The strokes were confident. She painted a woman standing at a cliff's edge, hair flying in the wind. Eyes full of hope and fear all at once. She didn't think about David or Ryan. She thought about herself. David called her the next day. His voice was quieter than usual. Double quotes, "Emily, can we talk?" "Really? Talk?" She agreed. They met at a small cafe near her house. No pressure, no expectations, just two people trying to understand what was next. "I've been thinking a lot," David said. "About us. About what we want." Emily nodded. "Me too. I don't want to hold you back," he said. "If you need space, time, or something else, I want you to have it." Emily took a deep breath. "I don't know what I need yet." "Neither do I," he replied. "But I want us both to be happy, even if that means apart." It was one of the hardest things Emily had ever heard, but it was also the kindest. They smiled at each other, a smile full of understanding and sadness. They weren't enemies, just two people who had loved, grown apart, and were learning to let go. Emily's relationship with Ryan grew slowly, naturally. They didn't rush into labels or promises. Instead, they shared moments, quiet mornings with coffee, long talks about art and dreams, comfortable silences where words weren't needed. One evening, Ryan took her to a quiet beach just outside the city. The sky was painted with colors of sunset, pinks, oranges, and deep blues. They sat on the sand, watching the waves roll in. Emily felt peaceful in a way she hadn't in years. Ryan turned to her. "I don't want to rush anything," he said, "but I want to be here for you, if you'll let me." She looked at him, her heart full but cautious. "I want that too." They didn't hold hands or make promises that night. They simply sat together, two people finding a new kind of connection. Weeks passed, and Emily felt herself healing. Her conversations with David became easier. They still talked sometimes, checking in, sharing memories with gentle smiles. It wasn't easy, but it was real. One afternoon, David invited her to his new apartment, a fresh start for him. She saw the man he was becoming, quieter, more thoughtful, and accepting of change. Emily realized she was growing too, not just out of her marriage, but into a new version of herself. She wasn't the woman who had felt lost and invisible. She was someone learning to be brave. Ryan surprised her one rainy evening with tickets to a gallery opening downtown. It was a big event, with artists and guests filling the space as they walked through the exhibit. Emily felt nervous but excited. She stopped in front of a large photograph. Her own portrait from Ryan's latest project. The crowd around her admired the photo, a woman with eyes full of stories, pain and hope. Ryan squeezed her hand gently. "You're ready to be seen." Emily smiled, tears in her eyes. She had come so far from the woman who felt invisible in her own life. Later that night, as they left the gallery, Ryan looked at her and said softly, "Whatever happens next, I want you to know I'm here. For you, not to replace the past, but to share the future." Emily felt warmth spread through her. "Thank you," she said, "for being patient, for understanding." We stood together under the city lights, two people ready to face what life would bring, together or apart. One Sunday morning, Emily received a message from David. "I met someone. I want you to know, no matter what, I hope you find happiness." Emily read the words slowly. It felt like a closing chapter and a new beginning all at once. She replied simply, "Thank you. I wish you the same." That afternoon she sat by her window. Painting the sunrise, she thought about love, loss, and the strange, beautiful way life moves forward. Sometimes it asks us to let go. Sometimes it offers a chance to start again. And sometimes it surprises us with kindness, with understanding, with a quiet love that grows slowly but surely. That Emily didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: she was ready. Michael Carter always believed marriage was built on consistency. He and Anna had been together for nearly a decade, and their life together was calm, structured, and at least on the surface happy. They lived in a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon. He was an architect who worked from home. She was an artist who had only recently begun showing her work publicly again. Their house was full of quiet. Moments shared, coffee on the porch, soft jazz in the evenings, dinners eaten in silence but not discomfort. They weren't passionate in the dramatic movie-like sense, but they understood each other. Or so Michael thought. Lately, though, something had changed. It started when Anna joined a local art collective. At first, Michael was proud of her for reconnecting with her passion. She'd stopped painting for years after her father passed away. And seeing her pick up the brush again made him feel hopeful for her and for them. She started going to more gallery events and meeting other creatives. One name started to come up often. Ethan. Ethan was in graphic design, part of the same group, younger by a few years. From the way Anna described him, energetic, passionate about his work, deeply supportive, it was clear Ethan made an impression. At first, Michael didn't think much of it. Friends were normal. Anna was friendly by nature, and Michael trusted her. But soon he noticed she mentioned Ethan more than anyone else. Michael remembered one particular Saturday afternoon. Anna had been out at a group painting session, and when she came home, she looked lighter, happier than he'd seen her in months. He asked how it went. She smiled, said it was wonderful, then went upstairs and stayed there the rest of the evening. It wasn't the words. It was the silence that followed. Over the next few weeks, Michael watched the distance grow. She was still kind, still warm in small ways, touching his arm when passing by, asking about his work, but her eyes weren't in it anymore. There was a softness missing. She was with him physically, but emotionally, it felt like she was drifting towards someone else. Michael didn't want to jump to conclusions. He thought maybe it was stress or a creative phase. But he wasn't naive. One night, after Anna had gone to sleep early, Michael found himself scrolling through her art collective's website. There, in a photo from a recent show, was Anna standing beside Ethan. They weren't touching, but the way they looked at each other told Michael everything. It was a look Anna hadn't given him in years. He closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. That week, Michael tried harder. He cooked dinner twice, picked up flowers on a Tuesday just because, and suggested they take a weekend trip to the coast like they used to. Anna smiled and thanked him, but there was a hesitation in her eyes. Her responses were polite, appreciative even, but not full of love. Not the kind they once shared. One Thursday evening, as Michael was doing the dishes, Anna came into the kitchen and leaned against the counter. She watched him for a moment, then said softly, "We haven't really talked lately." He turned to face her, wiping his hands on a towel. I know. I've been feeling confused, she said. Not about you. About me. About everything. Michael nodded slowly. Is there someone else? She hesitated. I haven't done anything. But yes, I've connected with someone. It wasn't intentional. It just happened. Michael felt the breath leave his chest, but he didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse or beg. Instead, he asked, do you love him? She looked down. I don't know. It's not like that. Not yet. But he sees me. He inspires me. I feel alive around him. That was the moment Michael understood. This wasn't about betrayal. It was about absence. An emotional absence that had quietly grown between them, unnoticed until someone else filled the space. They stood in silence for a while. The house felt bigger than usual. Colder. I love you, Michael, Anna whispered. But I don't feel the same way I used to. I know, he replied. I've felt it too. He didn't sleep much that night. Instead, he lay awake beside her, thinking about the life they'd built, the memories. The quiet mornings, the late-night talks, the laughter that used to echo through their walls. None of it felt false. But he realized something painful. Just because something was good once doesn't mean it's meant to last forever. He knew what was coming. He could fight it, argue, beg her to stay. But what good would that do? Love shouldn't be a cage. And if Anna was already halfway gone, holding on would only make things worse. By morning, Michael had made up his mind. He would not stand in her way. If she truly believed this connection with Ethan was something real, something she needed to explore, he wouldn't stop her. Not out of weakness, but out of love. The morning after their quiet conversation, Michael sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, watching the steam rise and disappear. Anna hadn't come downstairs yet. He had barely slept, but he wasn't angry. He wasn't even confused anymore. He was just tired, not of her, but of pretending things were fine. When she finally walked in, her steps were slow, unsure. Her eyes searched his face, probably expecting confrontation or maybe a painful silence. Instead, Michael pulled out the chair across from him and gently said, "Sit." Anna looked surprised, but did. He took a long breath. If this thing with Ethan means something to you, if it makes you feel alive again, I won't stop you. Her lips parted slightly. What are you saying? I'm saying, Michael said softly, if he makes you happy, go. I love you enough to let you find that. Tears immediately welled up in her eyes. Not dramatic ones, quiet, still tears that didn't fall yet, just hovered, waiting. I never meant for this to happen, she said. I believe you, he replied. And he did. They didn't argue. They didn't shout or say things they'd regret. There was just truth between them now. Honest, raw, heavy truth. Michael explained that while he still loved her, Kay could see that she had emotionally outgrown the version of their life that once felt so certain. And maybe, in a way, he had to. Anna nodded, wiping her cheek with her sleeve. What does this mean for us? Michael looked down at his hands. It means we give each other space. It means you figure out what this really is with him. And I take time to figure out who I am without you. It wasn't about giving permission. It wasn't about letting her do anything. She wasn't his possession. It was about choosing not to fight what was already changing. Over the next few days, the house took on a strange stillness. They were careful with each other, polite, respectful. They shared dinner, and they were both home but didn't try to force conversation. There was no anger, just the quiet grief of a love that was slowly transforming into something else. Something more like friendship. Maybe even gratitude. Anna didn't run to Ethan. She took time, just like Michael asked her to. She didn't bring him to the house, didn't mention him unless asked. And Michael didn't ask often. Instead, he started spending more time outside. He went on long walks, drove to the coast on a Sunday just to clear his head, and reconnected with an old friend, Ben. Someone he'd lost touch with during the early years of marriage. Ben noticed the change in him right away. You look like someone who just dropped 100 pounds. but not in a good way. Michael gave a sad smile. You're not too far off. He told Ben everything. Not in a bitter, venting way, but honestly, like someone who needed to be heard. Ben didn't judge. He just listened. Maybe this is a good thing, Ben said after a while. You've been the strong one for so long. Maybe it's time you focus on you. Michael thought about that during one of his evening walks. For years, he had lived to support Anna's dreams, to make the house run, to be the stable one. But now that the foundation had shifted, he realized he'd neglected parts of himself. Dreams he once had. Passions he had buried under routine. He started sketching again. Not houses. Just whatever came to mind. Trees, streets, faces. Things that reminded him of who he was before he was someone's husband. Then, one Wednesday afternoon, Anna came home early. Michael was sitting on the back porch, sketchbook in hand. She stood in the doorway, hesitant. Can we talk? He nodded, and she sat beside him. I saw Ethan again, she said. Not for anything serious. We just talked. He's kind. He listens. And he sees me in a way that reminds me of how I used to see myself. Michael closed his sketchbook. And I don't know what it means yet, she said honestly. But I think I need to keep figuring it out. He looked at her, really looked. She seemed lighter, braver, and strangely, he wasn't jealous. Maybe because deep down, he knew it wasn't about Ethan. It was about her learning how to feel alive again. I want that for you, he said. Truly. Anna looked down, blinking away tears. What about you? He smiled gently. I'm figuring that out too. That evening, they agreed on something big. Anna would move in with a friend for a few weeks. Not a full separation, not yet. Just space, time, respect for each other's need to grow. Individually, as she packed a small bag that night, Michael sat on the couch, holding a mug of tea she had made him. The house already felt different, emptier, but also honest. Finally, honest. Before leaving, Anna paused in the doorway. No matter what happens, I need you to know. You're the kindest man I've ever known. Michael gave a small nod, emotions caught in his throat. And I'll always be grateful for the years we shared. The first week without Anna felt strange. The house was quiet, too quiet. Michael would catch himself pouring 2 cups of coffee only to remember she wasn't there. Her favorite mug still sat on the shelf. Her slippers were still by the bedroom door. Even though she had only packed a small bag, the house felt emptier than ever. But strangely, he didn't feel broken. He felt still, like someone watching the first calm after a long storm. Michael began to fill his days with new habits. He joined a weekend hiking group through an app and started walking with strangers who became fast acquaintances. On those hikes, he talked more than he had in years. Not about Anna, not directly, but about life. Regrets, career, dreams he had shelved. He even admitted to one hiker, a retired teacher named Greg, that he had no idea who he was outside of being Anna's husband. Greg had smiled and said, "Then you've got the best kind of freedom, a blank page." Michael held on to that idea, a blank page. Meanwhile, Anna texted sometimes. Short messages, kind, respectful. She wasn't pushing or avoiding. She was giving him space while she took her own. From what Michael could tell, she was spending more time at the studio, focusing on her work. She mentioned Ethan once, just in passing. Michael didn't ask questions. He didn't want to be the man who waited around hoping she would change her mind. He wanted to be the man who changed his life regardless of what she chose. One afternoon, while reorganizing the attic, Michael found a box he hadn't opened in years. Inside were his old photography gear, photos from college, and sketchbooks from his early design days before he was building shopping centers and office parks. Back when he used to dream of designing museums and parks. Things that made people feel. He spent hours flipping through old photos, remembering how much he used to love capturing light, people, moments. Without thinking too much, he grabbed his old camera, dusted it off, and went downtown to take photos. That day, something inside him clicked. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but like a door slowly opening at a local coffee shop. While reviewing his photos, a woman at the next table leaned over and said, "That's a great shot, the one with the kid and the bubbles." Michael looked up, surprised. The woman had soft brown eyes, probably mid-40s, and a calm presence about her. "Thanks," he said. "Just getting back into photography after a long time." They talked for 20 minutes. Her name was Rachel, a freelance editor and part-time writing teacher. They talked about books, coffee, and the quiet comfort of small creative habits. It wasn't flirtatious, just easy, natural. When she left, she smiled and said, "If you ever need a second opinion on those photos, I'm usually here Wednesdays." Michael didn't say he was married. He didn't need to. Nothing happened. But when he walked home, he realized something. He didn't feel guilty. He felt alive. Later that week, Anna asked if they could meet. She didn't say why, just that she wanted to talk. They met at a small diner they used to visit when they were dating. When Michael arrived, she was already there, looking out the window. She looked calm, but her hands fidgeted slightly. "Thanks for coming," she said. Michael smiled. "Of course." They made small talk for a bit, how work was going, a funny story about a neighbor. Then she got quiet. "I wanted to tell you something," she said carefully. "Ethan and we've decided not to pursue anything serious." Khan mightn't react. He just waited. "I realized," she continued, "that what I was looking for in him wasn't about him. It was about what I felt I'd lost. And I thought someone new would fill that space. But it doesn't work that way." Michael nodded slowly. "I understand." "I needed the space to see clearly," she said. "And now I do. And I don't expect anything from you, Michael. I just needed you to know." They sat quietly after that. No one rushed. There were no big declarations, no begging to start over. Just a people who had lived something together, broken something together, and were now speaking honestly for maybe the first time in years. Michael looked at her and said gently, "I'm not angry. I just want us both to be at peace. Whatever that looks like." Anna smiled softly. "That's all I want to." That night, Michael went home alone, and it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another. He wasn't sure if Anna would come back. He wasn't even sure if he wanted her to, not out of hurt, but because he was beginning to build something new for himself. He picked up his camera again and went out just before sunset. The light was perfect. He snapped photos of people laughing, dogs playing, an older couple holding hands on a bench. Each picture felt like a step toward something better. Michael stared at Rachel's message for a moment, then placed the phone on the kitchen table. It wasn't a complicated text, just a kind gesture, a compliment, an invitation maybe. But what stood out the most was that it didn't feel heavy. It didn't carry years of tension or history. It felt light, open, and for the first time in a long time, Michael was ready for something like that. He didn't reply right away. Not because he didn't want to, but because he wanted to answer it as the man he was becoming, not the one still caught between a past and future. So he spent the day doing things he loved. He walked to the farmer's market, picked up fresh bread, and stopped by the bookstore he used to frequent before life got too busy. He flipped through a photography magazine and thought, "This is who I used to be, and maybe who I'm returning to." Later that evening, as golden light filled the living room, he finally replied to Rachel's message. "Would love to tell you the story. Maybe over coffee next week." She replied quickly, "Wednesday. Same place." And just like that, something gentle began to form. Meanwhile, Anna had settled into her own routine. Though she hadn't moved far, her world looked different too. She had more time for painting, more time for herself, and more time for silence, the kind that wasn't sad but reflective. She didn't see Ethan anymore, not because of guilt, but because that chapter had naturally closed. What had seemed like a spark turned out to be just a flash of light showing her what she had lost. Not what she wanted long term. She and Michael still texted. Not daily, but often enough to feel connected. There was no pressure to fix anything. Just mutual care. Sometimes she would send him a photo of a half-finished painting, and he'd reply with one of his sketches. No tension. Just sharing. When Wednesday came, Michael met Rachel at the coffee shop. She was already there wearing a simple green scarf, reading something on her tablet. When she looked up, she smiled like they were old friends. They talked for hours, not about broken marriages or lost love, but about photography, music, and quiet things like how fall always felt like a fresh start by the end of their time together. Rachel looked at him thoughtfully and said, "You seem like someone who's done a lot of letting go." Michael nodded. It wasn't easy, but it was right. In the days that followed, he saw her again. Once for a gallery opening, once for a walk in the park. Nothing rushed. Nothing assumed. Just two people enjoying small steps. One evening, Anna asked to meet again. Not for anything big, just to talk. They met at the park this time, under an old oak tree where they once had a picnic years ago. She brought a thermos of tea, and they sat on the bench like old friends. "I wanted to thank you," Anna said, breaking the silence. "For what?" Michael asked. "For handling everything with grace. You could have made it hard. You could have been angry or cold. But instead, you gave me space. And now I see things I couldn't before." Michael smiled gently. "We both made mistakes, but we also found clarity." She nodded. "Do you think we'll ever be what we were?" He looked at her honestly. "No, but I don't think that's a bad thing. What we were was beautiful for its time. But maybe now we get to be something different. Something better, in a new way." Anna wiped away a small tear, not from pain, but from acceptance. "I want us to stay in each other's lives." "So do I," he said. "But only if it's healthy, for both of us." They hugged before they left, and it wasn't emotional or confusing. It was kind, human, forgiving. Months passed. Michael and Rachel continued to see each other slowly. There was no pressure, just a growing friendship with quiet affection. He didn't rush to label anything. He just let it grow. Anna eventually moved to a small art loft downtown. She held her first show in spring. Michael came and stood quietly in the back, smiling as she greeted guests with confidence. When their eyes met, they exchanged a small nod. A silent thank you. In the end, Michael didn't lose his wife. He let go of a version of her that no longer existed, and in doing so, found a better version of himself. And Anna, in losing comfort, found freedom. Not freedom to escape, but freedom to become whole again. Their love hadn't failed. It had simply evolved.